Hi teachers, today we're going to talk about how to teach Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, which sounds like this. I know you don't need me to play Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer for you to know what it sounds like, so that was a bit of a joke, as is my shirt that I'm wearing. I'm recording this on November 1st, the day after Halloween, so I dug out my thrift store find to try to get into a little bit of Christmas spirit. It's a bit early to start playing holiday tunes, but we know it's really important. If our students are going to play holiday music around the holidays, they have to start it early. So here we are. So I want to talk today not just about Rudolph, but about how to teach a Christmas tune or a holiday tune or really any popular song off of a lead sheet as opposed to off of printed music. As piano teachers, we use a lot of printed Christmas arrangements, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I also like to teach holiday music as well as pop music and other things like that with using some of our practical skills that we can share with our students. And the one I'm going to look at today is how to read a lead sheet. So I have multiple versions of lead sheets, and I will link some things in this video description. The biggest book I own is this Hal Leonard Ultimate Christmas Fake book. And in general, especially for some of the simpler tunes, this is a great resource. You buy one book and you have all those popular tunes together in one place. Today, I'm using a slightly simpler tune lead sheet that I printed the sample of off of musicnotes.com. So that's the other thing you can do. If you want just one singular tune, you can look on musicnotes.com. And I didn't even pay for this. Of course, you should pay for it if your student wants to play the whole thing, but just for today's purposes, I'm just using the sample, and you can certainly do that in your teaching as well. So I'm going to start by just walking you through what I would do with my less experienced students. The first thing we would do would be to play the melody in the right hand, and I'm going to skip the verse about Dasher and Dancer and go right to Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Now, my least experienced students are probably not going to be able to read that syncopated rhythm real well, but that doesn't matter because they know this tune. So as long as they can just figure out what the starting note is and let the score help them with some of the bigger intervals, they can really play it by ear. You could also do this entirely by ear if you wanted to do a by ear exercise, and then you can pull up the chart just to reference the chords, or you can even work on chords by ear as well. So the nice thing about this chorus is it only has two chords, a 1 chord and a 5/7 chord. So we have a C and a G7 on this chart. C major. My students might be most comfortable with that first inversion G7 chord, T fa so. We could certainly talk about what a G7 is in root position. And I do always train my students, even from the earliest times of encountering a 7 chord like that, that we usually remove one note, either the third, so in this case I'll take out the B, or the fifth, in this case I'll take out the D, because 7th chords are just too rumbly and thick oftentimes if you include all 4 notes in there. So this depends on what your student's experience is with 7th chords, how much you want to talk about that here, or if you just want to say, we're going to use your normal chord tones that you've practiced in a chord progression or something like that. So the next step would be to play the melody with those basic chords, whatever you've decided to use for the G7. I don't really love that voicing right there because the right hand's playing B, so maybe I want to go down to the root position. Again, that's the kind of thing you can have a creative conversation with your student about. What do your ears like? What do your ears think is too dissonant? Sometimes students get confused when they look at a lead sheet and they don't see a chord over the next measure, such as the word reindeer, the second measure of this chorus. You can remind them that if there's nothing written, you can just replay the previous chord. And that's what I did when I played through that. So hopefully students who are playing this have already had a little bit of chord accompaniment styles experience. And so since we're in 4/4, you could do pa, or you could do pa pa pa. And that's just staying in that triad position, so I'm not moving my hand around to anything bigger than just a regular triad or triad inversion. So then, depending on which one they like, I'd have them practice that, which can be a little bit tricky for coordination when you're doing a syncopated tune such as Rudolph. Got that coordination, you can kind of talk about if you want to change any voicings in the chord or anything like that. Now for students who have a little bit more experience, you could talk about doing an alternating bass line, such as C and then G. And I would do the same pa of the pa on the top just to keep them kind of rooted in this position here. Again, you can have conversations about how you want to voice those chords, what you want to jump up to, and all that. If you want to make that even more grandiose, you can make an even bigger pa, kind of like a Chopin waltz style with a very low bass note and a fuller chord. Threw in a little fill in the bass line there. So that's one more thing you could do to jazz it up or make it sound more fancy. Now, all of these styles that I've just gone through have been keeping the melody in the right hand and letting the left hand do all of the variations of the accompaniment. So the other thing you can do is to kind of flip this around and have everything that you're playing on the piano be strictly accompaniment, assuming that someone is going to sing or play another instrument with the melody above what you're doing. So if that's your goal for your student, then you're going to want to put the harmony in the right hand and only the bass note in the left hand. This takes a little time for students to figure out the coordination of this if they haven't done it before, but they can simply find their C major chord right here in the middle and add a C with their left hand. Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer had a very shiny nose. And then you do want to play the G in the bass there. Of course, then you can vary the accompaniment for that using some similar styles that I just did with my left hand. So, or, and a great resource for this type of work with your students is called Puzzle Play by Forrest Kinney, and I'll be sure to provide a link for you for that in the description as well. All right, so that's given you about 100 different options for what to do with that chorus. Now, we didn't talk about the verse of this, the Dasher and Dancer part. Part of the other great thing about teaching this particular tune is that the chords up there are just triads that move down. F to E minor, to D minor, to C. It's really easy to play even for the youngest students who have just begun work on triads. E major, and right here my chart says D7, but my right hand's playing the 7th, so they can just play D major. And if you want to fill in a little bass line. Hopefully that gives you some ideas on how to teach a popular Christmas carol such as Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Let me know if you have other tunes you'd like me to go over or thoughts about how you teach holiday music, and best wishes in your teaching.